Welcome to the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Today, my guest is April Lang. April is in private practice in downtown Manhattan and works with clients who need help with relationship issues, life transitions, finding more meaning in their lives, animal bereavements, vegans, vegetarians, and activists. April works with people that have a deep connection to animals and the environment. As a vegan and an animal activist, April understands the life struggles that often accompany this passion. Stick around. I want to introduce her to you. Hi, April. How are you?
I'm fine, Nancy. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. You're in Manhattan?
I'm in Manhattan, New York
I,
City. Yeah.
I am a native New Yorker, born and raised in Brooklyn.
I was born in Brooklyn, so Brooklyn's dear to my heart.
So New
Yeah.
York is always my home, although I have a new home in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but New York is still my home.
Well, you can't take the New Yorker out of the girl, as they say, right?
There
Do
you
they
go.
say that? Well, I say that you can't.
And I have family there, so
Oh,
it's still, my connection is still there. So I thank you for being on the Vegan Pulse today. And I would like to ask you, how did you get into veganism?
yes. Well, it's so interesting when people ask that question. Some people have a very specific moment when the light bulb went off. They can just point to that. And for me, I really can't. I mean, I know what the journey was. And for me, yeah, I can't point to a particular moment, but I will say that when I was younger, I always loved animals, like many ethical vegans. And I do remember that there was a girl that I used to know that she used to go down to the beach with me, and I think she was a vegetarian, and I never even knew what that was. And she would say, "Oh, you eat animals?" I'm like, "Well, yeah," and I didn't know anything about it. And then start to learn a little bit more. And eventually, when I went to college, I slowly gave up eating animals. I gave up eating the first semester there, I gave up eating cows and pigs, and then chickens and turkeys, and I mean, everyone in between there, and then eventually fish. And I stayed that way for a while. And then one day I was working on a play, and I had not been eating fish. And I said, "Give me an egg salad." They brought in fish and a tuna salad. And I was like, "Oh, I'm so hungry." So I ate it, and I went back to eating fish. And it wasn't until years later that I went on a fishing trip with my family. Yes, a fishing trip, and didn't make any connection. And then I saw them throwing the fish into some place where they throw them on the boat. And I, naively said, "Well, what's going to happen with these fish?" "Well, they're going to suffocate, die, we'll eat them." I was aghast. And from that moment, never again did I eat fish. So I learned over time a little bit more about, animal agriculture. I mostly learned about it from reading Peter Singer's book, Animal Liberation, which fortuitously, maybe, I found outside a garbage dump near my grocery store where I had lived. And I'm looking at the books on the ground, and I saw Animal Liberation. I heard about that book. So I picked it up, I read it. Oh my God, I never knew the extent of the tortures that animals went through. So I vowed to become a vegan then. However, as time went on, didn't quite stick with it. Then I went up to Farm Sanctuary up in Watkins Glen, New York, and I got a tour of the place. And they explained to me then what goes on in the dairy industry and in the egg industry. Went home, vowed to never eat, any of those animals again. But I missed my dairy, so missed my cheese, went back for a couple of months. One day I'm sitting there and I'm eating the cheese, made the connection about what I had seen. It started to taste horrible to me. And then I gave it up for good. That was over 20 years ago. So long-winded story, but I'm saying it that way because people have many different paths. Some people I know have seen the film Earthlings, and like that, they're vegan. A lot of us have a more circuitous route, like I did, with fits and starts, and that's okay. As long as, you get there, that's what matters.
Exactly. And like you said, for me, I've heard about things and didn't really still make the connection because
Mhm.
we're all conditioned that this is okay. We get a package and this is our food.
Right.
It doesn't say this is an individual who wanted to live, right? So we don't make that connection. We just is what everyone does. And then finally, about 9 years ago, I had a friend who came and visit at my house. And I was so proud to tell him I was now vegetarian because he'd been a vegan ever since I knew him in college. And I was so proud I'm vegetarian. And he said, well, that's better. And I was like, so
Yeah.
you mean that?
Better, but not good enough. Yeah.
You know? And then he went on to talk about the suffering of the animals. And then right then and there, I just finally made the connection. It's like, when somebody's trying to light a fire and you get a couple of sparks, but it doesn't burn and you keep trying and trying. Well, then finally hit and it lit. And so thankfully, I've been vegan ever since. I just right then and there, I said, okay, I'm vegan. That's it. And so I got rid of everything that I had that was animal products for consumption. And then I let go of the other things that were in my house. I had a leather coat and stuff like that. That I had accumulated throughout the years, and I got rid of that as well and try to make my house, my home, as animal free as possible, right? Because you're living a life, and all of a sudden you become vegan, and then you have things. So it's okay to let them go little by little because
it is
not being wasteful or kind of thing. So
and those animals have died already, I mean, it's from the past and it was from a different life. And so I do know there are people that feel like they need to get rid of everything at that moment, but and that's fine if that's what you want to do, but it's also okay to say, I'm not buying anything else like this, but I have these things, and I'm not going to, maybe some people can't afford to get rid of their whole apartment and their couches and, and all in their wardrobe. So we have to be respectful of that.
Exactly. And I know that you counsel people.
I do.
That do transitions into veganism or who are activists. So talk to us about that.
Sure. So, so I'm a psychotherapist in private practice in New York City, and I work with a wide array of people with all different kind of issues, couples, whatever, and individuals with, lots of different struggles. And two of my specialties is working with people that have lost their animal family members, so animal bereavement. I don't believe in using the word pet because I feel that just minimizes who they are. So it's animal bereavement. And I work with people that are ethical vegans and animal activists. And some people are, yes, indeed, going through a change. They're making the, the adaptation to living a totally compassionate vegan lifestyle. And other people have been vegan for a while, but they're dealing with the reality of living in a world of institutionalized animal abuse, which is very difficult. And how does that, and it manifests in different ways. People have issues with their families not accepting them, families not making accommodations for them, being ridiculed. For other people, it's just being out in the world in general, and being surrounded by, just friends, just people, just advertising everywhere, all kind of animal cruelty in every aspect of the world. And how do you deal with that, right? And it's very difficult. For the activists who are out on the, in the trenches, it's very difficult too, because some, people that are doing rescue work or doing, direct action work, and they're in the thick of it, and all the trauma that brings up, what they're seeing, on a daily basis. Even people, who are ethical vegans on social media. I know in my own, social media feed on Facebook, oh my God, constantly this barrage of images of horrific violence against non-human animals, or people saying, look, can you help here? Can you help there? Whether it's wildlife or domestic animals or, farmed animals. So there's really a need for ethical vegan practitioners to be able to support these people. I would find some of the people would come to me and say, it's very hard to find a therapist that is an ethical vegan. And I have a wonderful therapist, but he or she just, I feel there's something missing. They just don't quite get it. I mean, they're nice when I talk about these issues, but they don't quite get it. So it's nice to find a therapist that does. And I will say that there are many more ethical vegan therapists out there. I'm in a group with a bunch of them, and it's all over the country. It's all over the world, people who are doing what I'm doing to support our community.
So I want to break it down one by one. So let's go back to animal bereavement, because I remember one time I had two incidents that I can remember. One was one of my dogs passed away. And so, I was very sad about it, was very destroyed because I loved, I'm trying to think of, it was my Molly. And I loved her. And then someone is like, oh, it's only a dog.
I know. That's a problem. That is a big problem. And one of the things that and I've written about this and I talk about this with people, is I say, be very, very mindful of who you hang out with when you're first going through the loss, because you want to avoid the people who are going to, they might want to be helping you, but they don't understand how to do it. And they don't understand either that, animals are not, non-human animals are not less than human animals. So, oh, it's just a dog, you'll get over it. Come on, get another one. Let's go out. Come on, stiff upper lip. Let's go. And that's not what people who have lost their animal family members need. They need to be around people that get them, that will support them in the way that they need to, which is basically to validate the worth of their animal family member and not to minimize the value.
Right, because she was like my canine. I call them my canine daughter, my canine son, because they're family to me. They spend more time with me than anybody else. They see me through my ups and downs, and of course, they're always waiting for me when I go home.
Always, which is the most wonderful thing. And that's right, they are family, and that's they are our children.
And so I don't like that word pet either. So I try to gear people to companion animal, family member, canine daughter, canine son, because it's not a pet.
Nope, not a pet. Not a pet. So good that you do that also.
Second thing is for vegans, right? I'll talk about myself, as we go through the daily, day-to-day, where you have people who are insensitive because they don't really realize the turmoil that's going within you when you've found all this information. And first of all, for me, I felt guilty because all these years I had been a part of that cruelty. And then second of all, then I'm like, okay, if I tell somebody, like when I first went vegan, if I tell somebody, they'll just not want to do the cruelty. And that's not true, because they don't make the connection that way.
Right.
And so it's difficult for day-to-day living for vegans who are surrounded by these flesh eaters and they don't understand.
It's very, very difficult. And there's no easy answer for it. I mean, each person has to decide for themselves how they're going to deal with it. I mean, having a really good support system is important. A lot of different ways of doing self-care is really important, because we can't get away from the reality that, we are living in a non-vegan world, and we can't, unless we decide that we're going to, go into a cave, we are going to have to deal with people that, that don't see eye to eye with us. When it comes to family, it can be a little bit trickier. Everybody has to make a decision for themselves about whether or not they want to stay, keep close to their family. Most people will, not all will. A lot of compromise has to go on both sides. Unfortunately, a lot of times it's the ethical vegan that does a lot of the compromising in order to keep the relationships going. But it's very much what works for each particular person.
And I also encourage changing the language. So if somebody says something to me that might be like, for example, somebody said, kill two birds with one stone. And I'm like, I don't like that. How about we say feed two birds with one stone? So we need to, in my view, is change how we talk and respond to other, and not allow them to continue what is so-called considered normal, because otherwise we're not going to change. They're going to always seem to disrespect us, or not meaning to, but because they don't know any better either.
Right. They don't think about it. And I love what you're saying about language. I mean, language is so important. So many, if all of us could just think about all the expressions we use on a daily basis, myself included, where we're using animal, metaphors, like, yes, let's find something else, because by using them, we're just normalizing it. And a lot of times people don't know. So we want to help them, give them information and help them reflect on, did you know you're saying this? But there's, do you really want to, do you want to kill a bird? Most people would say, what are you talking about? It's just an expression. But the more time we use the expression, the more, again, as I said, we normalize behavior that and ideology that is just not respectful of animals.
And I think that if we respond, not with anger and not without, rancor or anything like that, but if we just say, like you just said it, calmly, to make them understand that, because they probably don't know, when they say something that is disrespectful like that, it breaks my heart because they don't understand. I have this feeling for animals that they may not have at the moment. And so they don't really know how it's affecting me internally, because
they don't know. And they may never, and the other piece of it is they may never have that feeling that you have for animals.
True.
And then there's a dealing with that reality, but we don't know the future, so we can't go down that path. We can only hope that that will be the case.
And then next is activists. Now, I give them a lot of credit, not just the ones who stand up and do protests or write emails, but those that do the investigation and the photography.
Oh, yeah.
So, heart-wrenching, because when you see them, you were talking about those, pictures that we see that are horrific about animal abuse. They're actually experiencing that is has to be a trauma that they have to carry with them.
Well, it is. It really is a trauma. But of course, trauma really is how somebody experiences it, because everybody has a different resiliency. So somebody who's going to go out and do, direct action work, is going to go in and do the undercover investigative work or do the videos, of the undercover work. Or in a book that I wrote, there was a woman who talked about that she used to do the editing of those videos, and it's very difficult, but some people can handle it better than other people. For some people, though, it is very traumatizing, and they have to, for those people, I encourage them to, to get good support, maybe to have a vegan therapist that they can speak with. Going back to the self-care, there has to be ways to deal with that, because otherwise, if it gets out of hand, they could develop PTSD. It'll stop them from doing the wonderful work that they're doing. So if they're starting to notice that they're getting compassion fatigue or getting really traumatized, that's a moment to say, oh, okay, I need to pause over here to do my self-care so I can continue to do the work that I know is super important.
And then finally, you spoke about this self-care. Self-care, not just for the activists who's out there in the field, but even for just day-to-day vegans, because of I sit in the sofa to watch the TV, and all I see is this hamburger and then the cheese. Of course, following it is all the medicine to help you because you ate all that cheese in the hamburger. But it's like, come on already, get these things off the TV. I don't want to see it. And things like that. And it still affects you because it's out there, and this is something you're not in with, No,
of course it affects you. It affects every person who's an ethical vegan, somebody who cares, people that are doing hands-on. Hands-on can be, again, like writing letters to, also to newspapers, people that are doing that work, or people that aren't activists, but they're ethical vegans. You can't get away from it. So the self-care is super important, and people need to be mindful of themselves, noticing how compassion fatigue is registering in their bodies, right? Emotionally, what's going on, are their relationships being impacted, and to be able to say, okay, I need to nip this in the bud, right, before it gets more severe. What can I do for myself? What kind of strategies can I implement so that I can have quiet time, downtime, ways to shift my focus away from something very difficult for a while, to allow our nervous system to calm down, move away, and then be able to come back. People to talk to about it that understand. Very, very important for self-care for everybody.
So
That's
that's why I thank you for doing what you do, because that's
sure.
what you do is support and help us be able to continue to do what we do, whether we're just ethical vegan or an activist, but to remember that we need to take care of ourselves as well.
We do. And there's a big community out there of people, to offer support to. So I hope, that your audience will take advantage of that.
And especially because you're like-minded. Because as you said before, you might go to a therapist or a counselor and they have a different point of view. So they really can't actually get you 100%.
Not about this. They may get you about a lot of other things, but this thing, so not so much. Some ethical vegans are fine. They don't need to have an ethical vegan therapist, but there are those that really they would benefit from it. So if anybody is interested, I have a list of people that I could also send your way. If anybody was going to write into you, a therapist in different parts of the country, be happy to share that with anybody that's interested.
Sure. And if you have, I'll put up your Facebook, your website on
Sure.
our Facebook page. And if you have a link to all these individuals who are, in that circle,
Well,
I can.
not on my website, but I can send that to you.
Okay.
If there's if you want me to just do that, you can post that. Happy to do that.
Yes, because that way, it might help someone and
Sure.
that wants to look for someone who, thinks like them or is able to understand them better. Because, when you're an ethical vegan, everything you do is built up on that view that you have. And
Absolutely.
and to me, if somebody doesn't have that same view, they can't really get you 100%. They just, because your motives and the actions that you do are totally different from somebody else who's a flesh eater.
Right. And you want to be gotten. Very important. So yeah, I'm happy to send that.
Okay. Well, thank you. April, thank you so very much for taking part of your day to be on the Vegan Pulse. I surely appreciate you and everything you do.
And I appreciate you having this podcast. And thank you so much for inviting me. Really appreciate it. And have a lovely day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on another Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Remember, check out our website, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have a pulse, you have a purpose. Live vegan.